Greg McElroy never has any shortage of things to say, and I know what that's like. But one thing that he said over the weekend during Georgia's game against Missouri was kind of curious in a way. I want to read it to y'all and kind of talk about it for a little bit here. Talking about Jordan Davis, Georgia's superstar defensive lineman who plays a fair amount of snaps, not all of Georgia's snaps. And Greg was asked about what he thought about Jordan Davis being in the Heisman mix. And full disclosure, I've been a Heisman voter since 2005. So I can't talk about who I will vote for. I can talk about who I'm interested or watching and seeing to vote for. And I got to tell you right now, there's not an obvious person, and that's kind of where we're at with this thing. When people say, "Oh, would you really put Jordan at one?" It'd be hard, but it wouldn't be impossible. And I think the reason why is there's just not a kind of obvious person or people that will be in front of him. And when you look at Heisman odds, it's not a great list. I do not see. Yes, I do now. I see Jordan Davis on this list. Bryce Young at one, the running back at Michigan State, who I didn't know who he was until a week ago. Matt Corral, C.J. Stroud, Caleb Williams at Oklahoma, Kenny Pickett, who played okay at Pitt that I saw him play. Stan Hartman at Wake, that's not going to happen. Trayvon Henderson at Ohio State, Desmond Ritter, Brian Robinson at Alabama, and then Jordan. You can get him for plus 8,000, which means he's got a pretty low probability of doing it. Stetson Bennett is two below him. So you're trying to get some Stetson Bennett action, you can get in on that. But what Greg had to say, which is, should he be in the Heisman mix? He says yes, he should be in the Heisman mix. I don't care what anyone says. He's the only player no one else has. That is the key point. I think if you want to make the case that Jordan Davis should be in New York, I'm not going to talk about him winning the Heisman. I can't go there right now. But if you talk about him being in New York, yeah, I think that's totally in the realm of possibility. In fact, if I were Georgia, I'd be doing a little bit more than they have so far. It's early November. You got a good month, and this is the month that counts. Like the rest of the season, it just positions you for now. And so Jordan's positioned to where he could get there. I think he's got to be a top five guy. He's not going to have to be top three because probably this is going to be such a split up Heisman that nobody's going to, I mean, that's going to be what goes on here. I still think the Bama quarterback and the Ohio State quarterback and perhaps Matt Corral are going to be there, I would imagine, in New York. But there's no certain winner in this whole thing. Matt Corral is not going to play in a championship game. That will probably hurt him. Bryce Young is going to have to deal with Georgia. That's a major opportunity for him in terms of this award that will either win him this award or take it away from him. I mean, it's either they win and he plays really well, or they lose and he doesn't win it. That's what's going to happen there. Because Ohio State, the Stroud kid could be in the same situation. We just don't know. If they play Minnesota, you're not going to get any credit for that. So Bryce Young is the one who has the most momentum, and the running back at Michigan State's not going to get there if they're not playing the championship game. These championship games really matter more and more in the Heisman. The championship games are what I watch because it matters what happens when you're playing big time games. It doesn't matter what you do against Missouri. But I did want to read off some of Jordan's statistics for this year. And I realize that the Heisman is whatever the Heisman voter wants to make of it. So it's their person's rule, it's that person's vote. So it's not like there's a firm thing. I mean, what Steve Spurrier does with his is different than what I do with mine, is different than probably what Herschel does with his. So there's any different things. But for Jordan, he's one of 18 semifinalists for the Chuck Bednarik Award. Um, he's had 8 starts out of the 9, 21 total tackles. 3.5 of those are for lost yardage. 2 of those were sacks. Sporting News has him as a midseason All-American. He had 5 tackles against Auburn. 3 of those excuse me, one of those was a sack. He had a tackle for loss of yards against Clemson and had a quarterback pressure. He was a team captain against Carolina. He had a sack against Carolina. That play resulted in a safety. He's going to have a Heisman moment. There's going to have to be something, and the time to do it is running out. But it's going to probably same thing for Jordan. He's going to have a big game against Alabama. The Georgia Alabama game will be where Heisman voters go to start. And if someone makes such a great impact in that game, then there won't be a reason to go to CJ Stroud necessarily. I do not think Jordan will win the Heisman. I think this is about can he get to New York or not. For Bryce Young, he totally can use the game against Georgia if they play in it as a stepping stone towards the Heisman or to win it. I mean, it's going to be won on Championship Saturday. That's all there is to it. So uh, Jordan can do a lot, but I mean, in order for him to get to New York, he might have to score a touchdown against Alabama, and he can score a touchdown by, uh, scoring on defense. That would get him to New York. I'm just going to tell you right now, if he scores a touchdown against Alabama in the championship game, perhaps if he scores a touchdown against Tennessee on defense, I'm talking about on defense here, those would be things that would become Heisman moments. You've got to have a Heisman moment. If you don't have the long run, if you don't have Joe Burrow escaping the Georgia defense, keeping two hands on the ball, and throwing a freaking strike down the field to break that game open, he doesn't have his Heisman moment. He probably still wins the Heisman, but that cemented it. For Trevor Lawrence never won the Heisman. Uh, I thought he walked on water, though. We heard that so often. You've got to have a moment. What was Trevor's moments? What was Trevor's moment? I mean, I don't remember it. If it existed, I mean, it wasn't there in 2020. 2019, I don't recall it, but he wasn't a better quarterback than Joe Burrow. So there's a number of ways to get to win the Heisman. It can be accumulation of things over years, like Herschel. I mean, Herschel should have won the Heisman not fewer than twice. Okay, not fewer than two times. That should have happened twice. They messed that up. Okay, but back then you didn't have underclassmen winning it. For Tim Tebow, it was jump passes. For Desmond Howard, it was the Heisman pose. There's a lot of different things. For Johnny Manziel, it was the Alabama game. What is Jordan gonna do that gets him that? If you're Kirby, do you really get him the ball on offense? He plays about an offensive play or two a game. Is it worth it to go full Jim Donnan with Charles Grant and get him the ball? I don't know. This isn't the 1999 Georgia Tech game. We're talking about a team with Georgia that could win the national championship. Do you really want to risk your player having to turn around and locate the ball if Greg McElroy is correct and no one else has a player like him? There's not a lot of guys like him. So there's ways to do things. You could line him up as a fullback on the 1 yard line and get him to score against Tennessee or Tech, sure. But Jordan's probably going to have to score on defense. And if he does that, I think if he does that, he will go to New York. I mean, I think it's that simple. The safety, the stop against Carolina, that's probably not enough to get you there. But this has become. Did you ever? And I don't even know what these mean. I hesitate saying it, but I don't know if you remember from the late '90s, early 2000s. There were these stickers with Andre the Giant, and you just see them around. It feels like uh, guys national folks have just sort of embraced Jordan as a lovable teddy bear. We're getting pictures of video of him on ESPN before they play Georgia. Having watched him play in high school, he was hard to miss. It was hard to predict what he would be because he was playing left tackle. And that's hard to project how dominant he'd be on the defensive line when he was a left tackle or right tackle, whatever he played for Mallard Creek. But he wasn't playing defense. Same way Todd Gurley played safety until his senior year. I mean, he didn't play a lot of running back. Sometimes it's hard to project with guys, but Jordan has become a cultural phenomenon, and his story and his just taking off running might get him to New York. But I think if he scores, I think he would go to New York. And I don't see how that's any different than Randy Moss going in 1996 or 7. I think it was 97. I remember very clearly, no one thought Randy Moss would win that thing, but they thought it was the most awesome thing ever that he was there in shades and dreads. They thought it was, well, when I say they, I mean me. I thought it was awesome. My friends thought it was awesome. It was awesome. We've not seen a really good defensive player, I think, since Ndamukong Suh. There might be someone else. We hadn't seen a big guy in a long, long time. So I don't think he's there yet. But I do think there are chances to get him in there. I just with Kirby, they're not trying to win Heisman's. They're trying to win the national championship. I get it. Let's talk about it more over on dogpost.com. See you on the website.